reality. The apprenticeship board in the past was given the authority to approve registered apprenticeships in the state, and that authority has been taken by the federal government now since 2007. And so the effort here is really just to square the existing state law on apprenticeship with the reality of federal control over this program.
So everything in these sections, I see some strikeouts. Those are things that the federal government has taken over.
Yes.
And you no longer can do. Am I correct?
That is correct.
All right. You want to, before I open it to questions, you want to go back to what Mr. Hoffman said about the previous couple of sections?
Certainly. If you can remind me which topics, because I don't have the material in front of me. I was just listening in.
I think Mr. Hoffman was pretty clear. Section 125, your workers' comp strikes fiscal year in the preceding calendar year. So it just says in the preceding calendar year, which makes sense. And then down below, it struck the two words, the work. So it says per diem for each day devoted to hearings of the board. We are assuming you're working. And then you no longer have to mail certified return receipt, but instead it will be either first class mail or upon the consent of parties by electronic transmission. And you are okay with those?
Absolutely. We requested these. In all instances, the language that we've requested in House Bill 2 again squares us with actual practice. The department has for years been conducting its business in this way. And in fact, in some instances, we were cited by the legislative budget assistant in financial audits for not doing things according to statute. And so this is my effort to square us with state law, the things that the department has been doing for a number of years. With regard to the change from fiscal year to calendar year, we've got a number of different factors involved in those assessments, and it would actually, this is a simpler change than having to change some of the other procedures that we have. How can I do this in a few words? The self-insured workers' comp providers, those entities report to us because of statute and administrative rule. They report their claims to us on a calendar year basis. The insurance department has been giving us carrier information in the same way for a number of years. And so our assessments for these two funds that you see represented in House Bill 2 have been calculated based on calendar year claims. And we're just trying to make the statute read in a way that's appropriate for what our practice is.
Okay, so we have Mrs. Levinas followed by Representative Welts.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. On the top of page 56, line 1. Yep, this was just something I noticed yesterday. The language beginning in the middle of that line, line 1, such per diem shall be prorated to an hourly rate for other related work performed by board members. That should be bold. That is new language. And that's a type. I believe that's just a typo in the bill, but I wanted to bring.
Okay. Can we?
I can make a note of that. We can change that at any time.
Yeah. Is that something we can do in enrolled bills as opposed to getting an amendment?
At the end of the budget process, the Finance Committee generally votes to allow the LBA to make technical amendments that do not affect substance. Which
perfect.
I is
that works.
Something like that. So we can just take care of that.
Make a note of that.
We will.
Representative Walls.
Yes, I'm concerned with what it is that we are no longer requiring certified mail for. And I just want to have a clear understanding of that so that we're not violating the due process rights of people. So if somebody could explain clearly to me, I mean, it's hard to do this during the hearing, of exactly, is it that there's going to be a hearing? Is it an appeal of a hearing? What is it that we no longer require certified mail for?
If I might,
Yes, please.
it is a notice of hearing. And again, as I mentioned earlier, this is to square the statute with what the actual practice here at the Labor Department has been for decades. We have not been sending these hearing notices certified mail. If we did, it would represent an extraordinary increase in costs for the department. They have been using US mail here for as long as anyone here can remember.
May I follow up?
Follow up.
So if a person defaults on this, is there any attempt to follow up through certified mail or any way of trying to understand why they defaulted? Perhaps the mail didn't get to them, or what happens if there's a default?
Yes, certainly. There are additional contacts attempted, certainly.
And I guess what I'd like to say is, if we're not going to use certified mail, I want to codify the fact that there must be some sort of additional contacts if there's a default, because I have heard too many stories, perhaps not on this particular issue, but around the state, of people going so far as to lose their house because there was not proper notification, because it was sent first class mail to a prior residence. They didn't get notification, and literally a default judgment has taken their house from them. And
This isn't, Representative Walls, this is not about mortgages.
I understand that, but
this is very limited.
But it's the same principle. People need to have notification other than straight up mail, because default judgments are very harmful. And I just want to have some sort of recognition in here that if there's a default, that the commissioner or his agency has an obligation to follow up as to why there was a default. That it's
why don't we find out from Mr. Merrifield if they ever have a default, to see if we even have that issue. Mr. Merrifield, you understand her concern, even though you're not a mortgage. Can you explain for us if you have a default, and if so, what the process is?
Yeah, I think it's worth a mention that any decision made by our department in the Hearings Bureau has numerous appellate avenues to pursue. I mean, I could get you more information from the Hearings Bureau Administrator about what happens and what additional efforts are made to contact people. But I would just reiterate again, this has been our practice for decades, to use only US mail. So it's not a change in practice, certainly. And I think we have to consider at least the financial implications to the department. The Hearings Bureau Administrator recommended this language to us. I asked, my managers to alert me to situations where statute required something that was not efficacious to current practice in the department. So that's why we raised this. I'm happy to get more information for you about, what is happening. But it is the actual practice of the department for as long as anyone can remember.
Thank you. I'm not interested in asking the department to unnecessarily spend money on postage. I'm fine with first class postage in the majority of cases. I just want it clear that in the case of a default where somebody is not making an appearance after a hearing's been scheduled, that there is some obligation on the part of the department to do additional matters. And I think that needs to be codified, not just a recognition of practice, because there's no guarantee it's going to happen then. If we codify it, that there's an obligation on the behalf of the department, I think then there's no problem with no longer requiring certified mail that's not being done anyway. But I want to make sure that anybody has appropriate notice. That's basic due process. And if we don't do that, we can be sued.
Mr. Merrifield, will you get us, one, the additional information, and two, will you let us know what the practice has been? Since you've been doing this for decades, you surely have one or two people who didn't get to a hearing in a decade-long process. And if you could send that information to Janet Clayman she will get that to all of us, and we would appreciate that.
Absolutely. It'd be my
Thank you.
pleasure.
In that case, can we approve sections 125, 126, and 127, which stops prior to the section of that Mr. Merrifield is going to get us more information. So we're going to approve the first 3 sections. Representative Emmerich moves the approval of sections 125, 126, 127. Representative Leishman seconds. Mr. Merrifield, do you need to say anything on that, or are you okay with that?
I'm absolutely okay with that.
Okay.
One question though, what you've cited, does that reference the per diem language?
Yes, it does. But you heard what Mrs. Levinas said, that we do move at the end of the budget hearings to allow LBA to make some technical corrections. And she has noted that as one that needs to be made. So it will be taken care of without having a separate amendment by us.
Okay. Yes, then I am fine with all of that.
Okay, great. And you'll get us information. Okay, so on the motion to approve sections 125, 126, and 127, if you're in favor, you will say yes or aye. If you're opposed, no or nay. Representative Burge, T.
Okay,
Burge.
yeah, thank you. Whatever. Okay, okay, if you're in favor, you're voting affirmative, if not a negative. Madam Chairman,
Yes.
the Vice Chairman, Representative Emmerich. The clerk votes yes. Representative Griffin? Yes. Representative Leishman? Yes. Okay, Representative Hatch?
Yes.
Representative Walsh?
Yes.
Okay, affirmative, Madam Chairman.
Okay, we are unanimous in approving those. Ken will wait for that additional information. Thank you for being online this morning or this afternoon, and we'll continue to work with you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bob, I just promoted you to be a panelist. You're up next for DES. And I don't know which of your other staff you would like to have promoted with you.
If Mike, if you don't mind, Sue Carlson. Thank you, Chair.
I just have to find her. Hang on. I have her. She is joining you.
Thank you, ma'am.
This is Bob Scott, SCOTT, Sue Carlson, CARLSON. Do you need anybody else, Bob?
I have the division director standing by. I don't envisioning needing them, but they're there in case you need to, we have questions and you'll be able to promote them at that time.
Well, you know what? I see Mike Wamstad here. I'm going to move him over.
All right.
I see Rennie. I'm going to move him over. Who knows who you're going to need?
Okay.
I see Tom O'Donovan, and he's coming.
So budgeting is truly a team sport. Is that what you're saying?
It is a team sport, and to make it worse, no offense, but the speaker wants to see me at 2 o'clock. So my very able Vice Chairman, Representative Emmerich, will continue the hearing. We don't want to have to invite you back just because my schedule changed. So welcome. Thank you for coming. And we'll let you take it away. Mr. Hoffman brought up your handouts at lunchtime, so we have those in front of us.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that. So I will refer to the handouts, and since they're not on the screen for you, and you have them live, I'll try to remember to talk to your slide.
Nope. The LBA is going to put them up on the LBA website. Everybody will be able to access them in a digital format. So even though you're not sharing your screen, everybody will be able to see them.
Excellent. Excellent.
Madam Chair, they are already up.
They're already up. There we go.
All right. So should I start, Madam Chair?
Please.
Okay, thank you. So again, thank you for having us. As the chair has mentioned, I have our Chief Operating Officer, Susan Carlson, with me, as well as Division Directors and Assistant Director Pelletier. So we hope to be able to answer any questions you should have. I'll move on to slide 2 for the slide deck that you have. And I won't dwell on this too much, but just to give you an idea of the layout of our agency, for those who aren't aware. Again, however the chair would like, I can answer questions on the fly or at the end. I'll move to slide 3, which is our mission statement. Again, hopefully you're all familiar with that, which is to protect the environment and public health in New Hampshire. Some of our core functions, which is the next slide, slide 4.
Excuse me, Representative Walsh, you have your hand up. You have a question? No, I don't think she does. Her hand went down.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. Continue.
No
My
problem.
apologies.
So of late, the department's has much focus on water infrastructure, wastewater issues, and contamination issues. So we have other core functions, but those have really been the driving factors of late. Moving to slide 5, we detail that a little bit more. And I'll talk some more about some of these things. So for example, for water contamination, especially, obviously PFAS is the 4-letter word that we have of late. We also have, we'll discuss later, and it's in the budget, a new fund that was created last biennium for bonding, authorized bonding of up to $50 million for PFAS issues as a loan fund. So that's related and a newer thing. For infrastructure, the Drinking Water Groundwater Trust Fund is a relatively new and ongoing initiative. And then, of course, the Drinking Water and Clean Water State Revolving Loan Funds have been very, they've been oversubscribed and are very, I think, impactful to the communities. So with that, I'll go to slide 6. And again, just for some of our budget highlights, overall, our budget is just shy of $255 million for 22. We're showing 489 authorized positions. 89 of those at the moment are vacant. And you'll see there's over 115 federal grant and over 40 dedicated funds within the agency, just to kind of orient the committee. Moving to slide 7, our presentation for the slides will certainly mostly focus on fiscal year 22 budget, as it's pretty close to what our 23 budget is. And to give you some perspective, our COO, Sue Carlson, has created some of the pie charts you'll see here as you thumb through. So percentage-wise, again, just to orient the committee, we are roughly 9% general funds. Nearly half of that is state aid grants to the communities. 23% is federal funds, or close to $60 million. 68% is other funds. So if we break that down, that $172 million, the mostly clean water state revolving loan fund payments are about 27% of that. The 22% is the Drinking Water Groundwater Trust Fund. The waste fee programs account for 31% of that portion. The water fee programs, another 14%. The air fee programs, about 5%. In the commissioner's office, another 2%. So looking at that overall, the state revolving loan fund programs are about 35% of our overall budget. So moving on to slide 8, also to see how the funds are used. The operating budget is about 25% salary and benefits. 9% is operating expenses, service debt, and other miscellaneous. That leaves about 2/3 of our budget, again, for grants and loans, contracts, and oil fund reimbursements. Loans is our largest category at 39% of that. So I'll move on for the interest of time to slide 9. This is broken up by divisions. As you see, the water division is about 53% of the entire budget and about 53% of the staff. Waste division is about 40% at $102 million, and the air division and the commissioner's office make up the remaining 7%, or roughly about 118 staff combined. Moving on to slide 10, you'll see that the fiscal year 22 growth is primarily due to the creation of the emerging contaminant program in the waste management division. So that will be on page 834 of your book. I believe that's what you're looking at. And in the last biennium, DES was granted $6 million out of the Drinking Water Groundwater Trust Fund for investigation of PFAS issues in testing and some work on that end. And again, as I mentioned, in last biennium, the state allowed us to do bonding for up to $50 million for a PFAS loan program. That was part of House Bill 4 ultimately. So DES added $15 million per year to this operating budget request. And with the same, and with that, we also decreased some other contract appropriations by almost $4 million. So the increase in grants, as you see, is due to the Drinking Water Groundwater Trust Fund, which is on page 833. That was a $4.5 million increase. Again, we had some smaller reductions from other programs. One new federal grant to draw your attention to a line is on page 787, and that's for dam assessments. So the budget shows a $1 million increase for consultants. That's to use federal funds to perform a fairly detailed engineering assessment and design work on the state-owned flood control dams that were originally constructed by the National Resource Conservation Service, and particularly the 3 dams on the Sauhegan River watershed. So that I'll draw your attention to that because that is a significant change with that. And also compared to 22, there's a 3% increase regarding salary and benefits. And then in 23, due to the 27th pay period, there was a further increase for fiscal year 23. I assume all the state agencies are showing that. I'll move on to slide 11. And if I'm going too fast, please tell me. So slide 11, this table shows how the department's broken down again by funding source. The general fund decreased roughly by 12%, primarily due to reductions in salary and benefits, contracts, grants, and that decrease continued until the 23 fiscal year budget. The trust fund, the Drinking Water Groundwater Trust Fund, increased with grants, and all others on the slide there increases. Again, that's the emerging contaminants account I just talked about. That's a roughly $10.2 million increase plus minor increases for other fee accounts. So I'll move on to slide 12. So answering the chair's questions that was transmitted to us. So the first question is, what new full-time positions have been added to the budget? This is a slide showing that. The following slides will detail those individually. So I'll move on to slide 13. So under new positions, answering question number 1. So this is for our public information center. We get a fair amount of traffic for information requests, particularly under 91A requests. So we were looking to staff that a little bit better with a program assistant. So that's the one of the 5 requests we have in this this budget request. Moving to slide 14, our one-stop, which is the term we use for our combined databases and public-facing services that we provide on the web. There's a fair amount of work needs to be done to that. That's really a result of 20 years of, for want of a better technical word, of kludging together individual databases that have been made by the programs over the years to help serve the public. Those are all housed together under what we call our one-stop database. That needs a lot of work and to be able to be used into the future. We're looking for a business systems analyst to help with that effort. Moving to slide 15, our Wastewater Engineering Bureau is also looking for some extra support for the work they do. That's the, and again, they have the Clean Water SRF. There's a certain amount of oversight for the construction that goes along with that. And to the extent that state aid grants happen, we have similar issues on that as an example.
Bob, could you go back to one stop for a minute?
Certainly.
First bullet talks about one stop. And then last bullet talks about new one stop. Are you upgrading, writing new? What's going on?
We are hoping to, and if you look at the capital budget, we also have funds in there to revamp one stop. So give you an example. So last COVID's put a stop in my time clock here, but if I go back a little over a year ago, we had an issue where DOIT their contractor had done some scans, if you will, and as it turned out, that most of our database under one stop, the coding that it was created with actually had allowed for vulnerabilities for cybersecurity. So we ended up having to bring the system down while they recoded really as a Band-Aid because we were under a time crunch because people needed the service to at least get that system so it wouldn't have the same vulnerabilities. So that whole system really needs to be revamped and redone. Again, some of the databases are, approaching on 20 years, and as you well know, a lot happens, especially in this kind of technology. So that's what we're referring to as our new one stop. So we have some capital budget request as well, and this would help support that.
Thank you.
So I'll go back to remember where I was here. I think I talked about the Wastewater Engineering Bureau position, and going to slide 16 is an environmentalist position to help with residential well drinking water issues. So more than roughly 50% of all the wells, all the drinking water in our state comes from private wells. And with the contamination issues we've been finding statewide, we're really finding that to be an area where we need to provide more focus on. So that's an attempt to help that. So now I'll go to slide 17. So as I mentioned, for one stop, our waste management division also could do with some help. The one stop is department wide, but we're also looking at needs within that division, more specifically for database work. The good news we're finding as we do database work, the public generally, certainly the regulated public too, really start to depend on that. So the good news is as we start to do it, the more they want. And the bad news is, and you can't backtrack, understandably, because people start to depend on this type of thing. So we're trying to provide that service. It not only helps, obviously, the public, but it helps the agency run more efficiently also. So moving to slide 18, the letter the chair had sent also asked, question number 3 is what positions did we have to eliminate to meet the governor's budget requirement? So what we did do is under the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, or NPDES, and the Small Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System, or MS4 programs, last biennium, I think it was, biennium before, we had some positions created to help the agency and more explicitly the municipalities to provide assistance for those federal programs. So the MS4 program in particular if you look at a map of the state, would cover the southern part of the state, southeast part of the state. So a lot of the municipalities. This particular position would be for a financial analyst. That's something the agency typically doesn't have in our quiver of tools, and this is intended to help that help the agency, help the municipalities to look at their requirements and how can they more effectively and cost effectively meet the federal requirements. So given the fiscal constraints of COVID, we elected not to fund this position. We absolutely do want the position, and ideally we would like it, but given the financial considerations when we were developing the budget, we hope that the position is able to stay, but yet we could live a biennium without funding the position. So that's what you'll see in slide 18. Slide 19 answers the questions about, effectively, I'll paraphrase this, can we do our job and meet state law with the budget and as requested? And a short answer is yes, we think we can. We have, again, the 5 positions we've asked for in this budget. The real issue is going to be, as I mentioned, currently we have 86 open positions, is recruiting and getting those positions filled. But pending that, yes, we do feel we will continue to be able to do our job. Slide 20 is a question about if we found any laws that we think should be eliminated. Short answer is none at this time. We are, put this way, the agency is not bashful about talking to legislators. So as we do see something that could be either streamlined or certainly eliminated, we understand that we should be coming forward to you all as the legislative body. On slide 21 answers question number 7. For what priorities were not funded. So I will refer that we have three on our priority needs list that weren't funded originally in the governor's budget. I assume you've all seen the governor's letter to you all of the 3rd of March. So there's on the slides are 3 items. There's actually a 4th item which was added and is on the governor's list on that 3 March letter. So since that's not on the next slide, I'll talk about it now. So that's a mercury analyzer. So that's $55,000. So the background of that is almost all the New Hampshire water bodies are mercury impaired. And we know this because we've had basically about a 30-year data record for that. And we have statewide mercury advisories for the state. In fact, last year we added more fish species to the advisory list. So the current analyzer we had is really absolutely at the end of its useful life, and is as you may imagine, after a while that you can't get parts for some of these old analyzers. So that was an ask we had of late, and that is in the governor's letter of the 3rd of March. So what is in the slides is on that prioritized needs list is slide number 22. So we had a request for some consulting work to help our wetlands program get e-permitting, get closer to be able to do an e-permitting system. We also had, which is item A on slide 22, and then we also had requests for maintenance activities at our Superfund hazardous waste sites. And then item C is for a 4-wheel drive vehicle to help support that program also. Slide 23, there was questions also in the chair's letter to us about House Bill 2. So we took the liberty here of talking about state aid grants. So state aid grants in House Bill 2 continues a moratorium on state aid grants. What we bring up here, there are multiple bills, both for drinking water and for wastewater state aid grants. Those conflict a little bit with the budget. So the budget request. So I just want to draw your attention to that. Just for background, most of you already know this, but the state aid grant programs and after the fact reimbursement, usually for about 20% of a project cost. And historically, it's been done for wastewater treatment plants. So clean water, which is the term of art for that. So these two bills, since I'm talking about them, the drinking water systems grant bill, I'll draw your attention to our testimony letter, my testimony letter on that. Unlike clean water, the clean water state aid grant, where we've had that program off and on running for a while with existing staff, the drinking water program for state aid grant hasn't existed since 2008. There was a small amount in 2011. So we have no program to administer that right now. There's not the staffing for that. So we'd have to stand up that. And again, I know this is a little bit outside the budget per se, but it's related. So my suggestion in that letter was there's the state revolving loan fund, there's a drinking water groundwater trust fund, there's a SNOOP PFAS loan fund. And that may be a better way, more efficient way, rather than standing up staff to do a new program. So I just want to draw your attention to that. And again, as always, we can answer questions for that. There are issues, and Sue Carlson can talk to on the state aid grant is in the operating budget to the extent that prior work was done by 2019. And we also had existing obligations met. So if the project effectively, the request had gone through the government council already. So certainly Sue can answer more questions if you have on that. And then almost wrapping up here on slide 24. Again, as I mentioned on House Bill 2, we're asked to comment on that. Section 59 extends the date for I mentioned that we had gotten $6 million out of the Drinking Water Groundwater Trust Fund. It extends the date for that money as far as the sunsetting for us. In section 60, I think they're all on the page 26 of House Bill 2, establishes a moratorium on new state aid grants. And then of course, we will pay attention to a lot of House Bill 2, as you're well aware, talks about the Department of Energy. So to the extent there's any overlap, we'll pay attention to that issue also. So with that, I don't want to ramble on too much more than I have, and we're very happy to answer any questions the committee has.
Questions? Representative Leishman.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So you said earlier you had a number of unfunded or vacant positions. I think you said something like 89. Are those
Correct.
all funded or are not funded?
Yes, no, those are all funded.
Those are all funded. Okay.
So as you're well aware, during the height of COVID, we were basically just about filling positions. So that kind of added to that. And then of course we have the normal sequence of retirements and people moving on and that type of thing.
Further
Follow up.
Thanks. So I'm looking at dam operations, excuse me, on page 761. And I saw where in other areas where electricity, heat, and water had stayed the same or gone down, but on this particular line items 23, it's going roughly from $6,000 a year to $16,000. Can you explain why that's up so high?
I'm gonna let my chief operating officer try to take a stab at that. I'm gonna put her on the spot. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Yes, what we were seeing is a large increase in electric rates at our dams. And as we convert dams from manual operations to automated operations, that obviously increases our utility bills to run those automated systems. And that's what's driving the increase.
No further.
Go ahead, further on.
Okay, thanks. Also there, I see that you're reducing the number of staff from 8 to 7, and there were some other areas like wetlands, you're reducing staff from like 9 to 8. Could you tell us why you're reducing in those areas?
Essentially, what we did was we moved staff around. In this case, under dam operations, what we did is they had a position that they were not using. So we converted that position to a paralegal position and actually moved it from this account up to the 1002 account, which you will see on page 712. And in wetlands, what you will see, what we did was we moved one of our positions that was a general fund position to one of the fee accounts. And we did that to stay within the governor's budget recommendation on reduction in general funds.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I'll let someone else go, but I do have a further
Why
question.
don't you, you're on a roll. Go ahead.
Okay, well, thanks. So I don't know if this is a question for you, Sue, or Mike Wimsett, but I had a question on recycling and solid waste.
And
sounds
the
like Mike
question
Wimsett.
was?
You know, we've seen, you know, we've talked about this in the past, Mike, all the solid waste issues in the state. There was a committee formed some time ago that looked into this and was concerned that whereas some states like Vermont is banning food waste, Massachusetts is banning construction waste, we're still accepting all of this here in the state. Is the state looking any further in regulating what we have so we have room to dispose of our waste instead of accepting a lot of the waste from states around us?
Sure. Thank you, Representative Leishman, for the question. So there's been a tremendous amount of interest in the whole topic of solid waste management, particularly with regard to recycling and diversion, you know, from technologies for diverting solid waste from landfill disposal. We do have a lot of work going on. We're actually pretty excited. We have been under-resourced in this program for a long time in terms of not having the available staff to work on those types of initiatives. And we actually have a reorganization plan in with the Division of Personnel right now. And we have in this proposed in the governor's budget positions and an organizational structure that help us start to focus on those things. So we're very optimistic about that. We're also going to be working on a state solid waste management plan that will, and we expect to be engaging stakeholders from across the panoply of interests there. So it'll include you know, legislators and members of the public, waste industry representatives, and business community. So we're really excited about that in the future. But it is certainly true that our ability to address those kinds of issues in recent years has been pretty limited.
So just a quick follow-up.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So you're saying, Mike, that it looks a little brighter than it did maybe 2 years ago? I know there was like I said, maybe earlier, there was a group, a commission that looked at it and was very concerned. So you see some opportunities to address some of these concerns?
I do, and actually that committee that was pulled together, I think it was House Bill 617, really was a kind of a catalyst for that. They had, I think, a number of meetings in just 2 months. I think they met something like 14 times. They heard from about 50 witnesses, and they really collected a lot of information and kind of developed a roadmap for the kinds of things that we want to be working on. And I would go so far as to say, I think we enjoy more interest and support, both from within our own DES leadership and the governor's office and the legislature than we've ever seen before. So I'm very optimistic that in the coming couple of years, we're going to be doing some really good work in that area.
I know we have a lot of faith in you, Mike, so good luck. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Hirsch. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner Scott, for being here. And I really appreciate your handout because the fonts are large enough for me to read. I greatly appreciate that. I apologize for my ignorance. I was surprised to see that you do loans. Are those loans to municipalities? Could you clarify that for me, please?
Sure. So there's two major, now three, loan programs that we have. So the state revolving loan program. So we have one for drinking water, which is what it says. The other one's for clean water, and that's a term of art. So, when you hear clean water, think of actually wastewater to clean the wastewater, or stormwater, that type of thing. And then the third new loan fund is
Trust.
for PFAS impacted entities. And then to complicate things even more, we have the Drinking Water Groundwater Trust Fund, which does loans and does grants. And that's again for drinking water. So the SRF programs, hopefully somebody will correct me if I get it wrong, but the SRF programs start on a federal appropriation. So we have two major accounts there, the money we get from the feds. And then since they are loans, even though they can have a certain amount of loan forgiveness, we also have an account for the repayment funds, which we again then turn back out. So short answer is yes, primarily these go to municipalities for their water and clean water infrastructure projects.
Follow up? Yeah, follow up. Also, what is the interest rates involved for these loans to the municipalities?
Sure,
I can
I'll let
take that
Sue
one.
talk about the latest one, latest interest rate.
Good afternoon. Yes, for the clean water, our interest rate is set at 2%. And for drinking water, it is a variable rate starting, I think, at 1.58 and going up. If you were to check our website, we set the rates once a year every fall, and those rates hold for the entire year. And we can send you that link if you would like.
Okay, thank you. Follow up. Are those rates compounded, or is it a flat rate for the loan?
It's a compounded rate. What we do is under EPA guidelines, we follow what is called the 11-year GEO bond rating to use as the base for setting our interest rates for loans.
Thank you.
And if I could add, as Sue mentioned, we're really under, they are relatively low compared to others, generally speaking, so they're attractive, but they are we're under federal guidelines on how we set those, so it's not at our whim. The other probably downside to the SRF loans in some respects is the federal cross cutters, because the genesis of this is federal money. So whether it's Davis-Bacon wage reporting or American Steel requirements, that type of thing. So there is a little bit of an administrative cost to taking these loans that other monies may not have associated.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Commissioner, I have a question. On your handout, you referenced section 191, which is the creation of the Department of Energy. And that goes on many, many sections after that. My question is, just in maybe from the 30,000 foot level, what is the effect of this department or the interaction with this department or your issues plus or minus with this reorg?
So a few things, and none of them are, I won't say we have any major issues with the legislation or interactions, but right now my staff deal with OSI, the Office of Special Initiatives on, for instance, the state is in receipt of funds from the Volkswagen diesel settlement. We work with them on, there's 15% of those funds go to electrification for electric vehicles in the state. We do, with them at OSI, we work on there's some federal money that comes in for diesel emissions retrofit or Diesel Emissions Retrofit Act funds. From Congress that we kind of work with OSI on. So we have interactions with, that will of course be subsumed into the new Department of Energy. So we have those interactions. We have a seat on the Energy Efficiency and Sustainable Energy Board. So that will be at least administratively assigned in some respect to that agency. I'm vice chair of the site evaluation committee by statute. That will then be administratively attached to the Department of Energy. So those are the type of things. So it's more on the peripheral, if you will.
Okay. Thank you. Other questions? You're in the governor's budget book, you start on page 713 and go on for quite a ways. I would ask Ms. Carlson if you have any pages you'd like us to particularly note where there's variances that might catch one's eye, because sitting here paging through this entire book could be a laborious process.
We tried in our presentation to identify those areas where we had significant changes in the budget, just so that you didn't have to go through all 135 pages of our budget. I would suggest, if I don't have a particular pages for you to suggest other than the ones we have already given you.
That's fine. I just.
So the two we gave you.
Our biggest thing, if you, let me show you where our single biggest change is in. And that is down on page 833 and 834. And that is account 8873, which is our emerging contaminant account. That shows where we have, where the PFAS money is being budgeted for 22 and 23. And that's the one program that had one of the most significant changes to it in terms of dollars.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Representative Leishman.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Another issue of concern is in the past dam maintenance, and I see you've gone up fairly significantly there. How are we doing on the dams and the maintenance of all the dams that are under your jurisdiction?
So on the capital budget side, we actually had a fair increase because of that. So we have two issues. I think I called out for you on page 787, the extra $1 million for the some of our state-owned dams from federal money for an assessment. On the capital budget, we're also looking at asset management help on our dams also. So short answer is you know, the capital budget and operating budget work for us this cycle. I will say, as a word of things to come for future budgets, the closer we look at our dams, and we're doing some work to get contract work to look at our dams also, the more we're finding. So you know, to be blunt, you know, one of the things I have an ear towards right now is, to the extent there's money's coming from the feds that could be used for this type of thing, that may be a good way to get us back on an even keel, if you will, for the future. But by and large, it's something that looms large on our radar screen. And, you know, without, you know, maybe federal funds come to help us on that end, you'll see a larger, especially on the capital budget side, a larger request than we have in the past to keep our dams whole, if you will.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Do you have any comments you'd like to offer the workshop at this time? So
just to follow up on Representative Leishman's last question. So to give you an idea, the average age of our state-owned dams is a little over 100 years old, right? So we have an aging fleet, if you will. So, and as always, obviously, I hope you know this, but if we can answer any questions or anything you have as a committee afterthoughts, please feel free to let us know too. We'll get right on that and get you answers.
Your dam sounds a lot like the legislature.
No comment.
Any other questions? There being none, I would say thank you for coming. And we'll look forward to seeing you in a couple of years.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
As far as the committee goes, we will reconvene Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock. At that time, we'll be considering I believe it's 5 bills now. 425 was waived off, so we will see you next Tuesday at 9 o'clock. So this question? I think that's what the chair planned was, yeah, yes, yeah. Yes, yeah. Yeah, it's like getting your teeth drilled with no Novocaine. So,
Mr. Chairman,
yes,
do you know if copies of the bills are being mailed to us?
I can ask.
I sent Dan an email for that, for you too.
great.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Just wanted to make sure we're getting them.
I think so.
Great,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, thanks, Bill. All right, no further business. We are adjourned.
Peace.